Wouldn't it be cool to create a media property and still inspires creative people? I'm a YouTuber who talks with YouTubers how to become a YouTuber. That gets a chuckle.
One word to describe the European creator economy.
Independence over how they work and what they work on.
Do you think that freedom comes at an expense, though?
Burnout is very frequent for a lot of creators. The question always is, can you imagine yourself doing anything else? What I would like to achieve in the somewhat near future is Mel and I connected a few weeks ago on LinkedIn, and I learned that after years in the finance industry, she's now building a tool that helps creators around the world make more money. But more importantly, when we had a chat, we had instant chemistry. And so when she asked me, how can I help you? I said, why don't you ask me questions on my show? That never happens. I never really get to explain what the idea behind Orbit is and why I'm doing all of this. So this is a conversation between me and Mel, the long-term vision of this channel, and why I'm doing all of this. I hope you enjoy.
The reason that I reached out was your alias on LinkedIn that grabbed me, the European creator guy. How did you come up with that term, or was that the term that was given?
I don't know. I started writing on LinkedIn because I thought it was a place where I could connect with people who work for brands who might become sponsors. That is the reasoning why I am on LinkedIn. And I had an interaction specific where I don't remember what my tagline was, but like the person at the other end of the line thought I was an agency connecting brands and creators. I was like, oh wait, that's not who I am. That's not what I want to be. So let me rethink this. And the topic of the European creator angle is something I always talked about, that I always pitched, that is important in my message. So it's just like, okay, what's the simplest version here? I was like, I'm a dude in Europe and I talk about creators. Let's smush that together, the European creator guy. And now I've had that line there for at least 6 months, if not longer. And now I start seeing people resonate with that and people message me because of that. And so it wasn't like overnight I changed my tagline and now I'm successful. It's just this, I don't know, putting things out there and eventually things are going to come back to you.
How do you introduce yourself at parties?
Oof, that's the hardest thing in life. One of my favorite taglines or like, quirky ways to introduce myself is to say, I'm a YouTuber who talks with YouTubers how to become a YouTuber. That usually, that gets a chuckle. So, and everybody understands it, sort of.
Look, I love it. In my head, I've just got how many times can you say YouTube in one sentence? And I think you've now just elevated that number. I think you're definitely in first place. All right, so European creative space, do you see a difference between, say, America, Europe, and I want to say Asia as well? There are other continents, but maybe let's start with the US and Europe.
There's definitely a difference. The US is very culturally driven by growth and financial gains. And that's why it is called the creator economy. And it might as well be called the creator culture. The people who are making it an economy are the 1%. But the people who create the culture, that is the bulk of it. That is all the people on TikTok who just repeat the meme, who make it a trend. It is the people who are just vlogging their vacation for other people to see. Ultimately, it is more about the lifestyle, I think, and the self-expression rather than making it a money-making machine. That's at least how I experience it.
Do you see brands creating a shift in Europe from what you see as the creative culture and going to a creator economy? Because obviously their counterparts in the US are so driven by the money, the branding. How many more brands are now going into the social media? Like Duolingo did that kind of take, I think it was yesterday, on the Saragota water. And I thought, that's awesome. But it is still, it's a top-down social media. It's not a bottoms-up media as much as they claim it. So I'm curious to get your lens.
What I can tell you is I see more and more brands actively looking to get into the European market. It is becoming more attractive, and I see more brands resonate with, we want to be in Europe. So that's definitely at play here. And there are startups here that want to facilitate creators and kind of become the back end of things. And it's just going to be time to see how it plays out.
I love what you said about the creator culture versus the creator economy. And I think that plays into what you've been talking about around Orbit for creators, right? It's not Orbit for the creator economy. It's all about that culture play. So if there's one thing you want Orbit to be known for by the end of this year, right? 9 months left. What is it you want it to be known for in Europe?
It is the place for solo creators. If you want to learn to become a creator independently or hang out with other solo creators, Orbit is the place. Bottom line.
Awesome. Super clear. I love it.
Hey, if you're still watching, chances are pretty high that you either are a creator or you're trying to become one, because most other people have left at this point. And that is actually a good thing, because I'm not optimizing for everybody. I'm optimizing for the right people. Solo creators who are trying to grow their audience without losing themselves. And if that sounds like you, check out the Orbit newsletter, where I share weekly system strategies and stories that help you grow as a solo creator and create with less burnout. All right, you find the link for that in the description. And now let's get back to the show.
What I'm excited to see is also how we start, as we said earlier, the blending of the real kind of physical world with the digital world, and how content creators can have a foot in both. I do sense, though, and this is a topic for maybe another time to get together, is that the business understanding of the content culture and the content to content creator economy is really superficial, and that can really catch some people out. And that's something that I would love to see, how more people come in and help that kind of future of work to be sustainable, where people can live and share what they're passionate about and turn it into a business, so that they have food on their table, they have their home if they wish to own their own home, and so forth. How do we actively help them? Because they don't need to go to business school.
No, I think the next step in that is create systems for creators. Instead of everybody reinventing the wheel for themselves, setting up their own Notion thing and figuring out how to organize the files on a desktop, like all these, like, they almost sound banal, but like all these baseline structures to share that with each other.
I have to say, that really resonates with me, right? As you know, I've been in this industry technically for like 3 months, and it brings such joy to me in terms of everyone's openness and connectivity, and almost like we're kind of rooting for each other. It doesn't feel like that big corporate world where you have like one big bank fighting another big bank. This is actually about all of us saying, look, we're individuals and we relish in each other's success, and we want to help each other out for the benefit of our small community, but then that ripple impact of the bigger one. And I think also it's a common understanding of how hard this can be as well, right? In terms of always on. So when you were speaking with like all these different content creators, kind of hanging out with them, I remember actually one of the reasons I reached out to you was because you had just done, I think it was a 1-month stint, like a European creators house. And that's where I kind of stumbled across your LinkedIn message. So tell me, how did that come about?
The first creator I connected with, Wojtek, he's now a digital nomad and very much interested in exploring the community topic and how do we live together. He and his wife rented a house in Spain for a month and asked other people, do you want to explore the topic of community and how we live together? And I was like, yes, I would like to do that. And so I think it was seven people, 8 people who came together for a month in Spain and worked together, lived together, and talked about what community is to them and how we can grow closer together in a world that is trying to drive us apart.
I'm curious in the sense of, if I was a fly on the wall when you were having these kind of conversations, what would be like my key takeaways from this 1-month experiment of creators living in the same house and co-creating and exploring kind of philosophical discussions?
I think the key takeaway is that nature is incredibly important to the human experience. And we need to get outside more, touch grass.
How so?
We were in this setting where it was literally less than 5 minutes and you're in the forest and you can walk up a mountain, and there were sheep and goat outside, and getting up in the morning, looking out the balcony with your coffee and just like taking in the sunrise over the mountains, and then at the end of the day you see the sun set over the mountains. It just grounds you. It like shows you, ooh, we are real humans in a real world and not chronically online, and it's not just all about the digital. And you feel this sense of relief of like, oh, it feels nice to just be in the forest for 5 minutes and then go back and then be heavily online, because that was the other side of things. Like if you walk into a room that is dead silent and five people typing away on their MacBook, fully focused, fully engaged, and then maybe 10 minutes later, two of them stand in the kitchen and have very deep and very concrete conversations about what they do, having these kind of water cooler conversations that you might have in a corporate office, but that don't happen between digital nomads, solo content creators, people who just like work in front of a screen all day.
It can be quite lonely, I think, from the outside looking
Yes.
in. It does feel very lonely. And it's interesting. Everyone talks about this is the digital space, this is the physical world. From my perspective, I see it blurring. I think what you're talking about is that kind of blurring of those lines. So I'm wondering, was the birth of Orbit for Creators an outcome of that 1 month experiment?
The genesis of Orbit was something that goes way back, because I never had a traditional job. I was always curious about how do people work. That's just something that fascinates me personally. And then as I got more entrenched in the creator economy, I was just like, how do all these individuals that may or may not have any professional background in video production, how do they set up their space? How do they get the things done? All these things. And I was like, let me talk to some of my creator friends and get a little bit of the origin story and see why they do what they do. Because it is slightly crazy, you know?
So what's the why? I'm really curious.
For a lot of people that I interact with, it is about self-expression and creating a world that is under their own control, having independence over how they work and what they work on. That is a very strong sense of freedom to do what they choose.
Do you think that freedom comes at an expense, though?
It has to be very protected, that freedom, because there's a lot of forces at play that pull and push you into different directions. And I mean, burnout is very real and very frequent for a lot of creators. I have to say, it is this insanity of like being always online and always having the expectation of publishing something. That narrative of like, particularly for YouTube, you have to publish once a week if you want to be successful, is something I've actively fought against for a long time. Less so now, but it's not healthy. Athletes have seasons and they take breaks and they come back, they train, but they're not playing 52 weeks a year, right? And even in a professional setting, you have breaks, you have seasons where there's more workload and where there's less workload. But like content creators, I want to see you every single week. I want to see you every single day in my feed so you stay relevant. That is kind of the narrative that has been pushed for a long time. And I think that really needs reframing.
That's a narrative that I've been exposed to since coming in. And it's a narrative that surprises me that it's so normalized.
Yeah.
That it's okay. And yet everyone rapidly talks about, oh, you know, the 2 year magical burnout mark and how different talent agencies have all these courses and programs to support their creators. And I'm like, well, maybe we need to stop trying to solve for the symptom and go to the root cause.
Yeah.
And then when I start looking at it, if I was playing devil's advocate, wouldn't someone just say, well, there's so much technology out there today where you can pre-prepare your content So you can take that break, that you can build those things in.
You can definitely pre-produce, and you can create a system for yourself that you are always present. But for example, I'm gonna be on a getaway next week, and I could upload if I wanted to, but I know it wouldn't be a break. I would still be thinking, oh, is everything right? Is everything set correctly? And then once it's published, I want to know how it's performing. So, like, even if I'm not looking, my brain is constantly there, not taking a break. So, unless you have a team that you fully trust and that can just handle it, and you're just the, I don't know, the face or the manager or whatever, yeah, in that situation, you might be able to do that. But as a solo creator, I don't think you can take a break while still publishing and actually get the benefit of rest.
I think it's important that we do switch off. And I guess I'm wondering, will the algorithms ever allow it? I'm not convinced. But actually, we digress. I want to know much more. Let's pull this back, because you and I always digress. Pull this back to the orbit for creators. So understanding the genesis of it, what would you say is the key goal for you?
What I would like to achieve in the somewhat near future is to create a physical hub in Europe for creators. Create this awareness that European creators exist, are maybe not like American creators, and create synergies between them. The infrastructure in the US is so well developed and has developed over the last 3-4 years, really. And it still feels like in Europe, there are elements of it, but there's not much connection between all of us. So creating this hub, that is the immediate goal that I want to achieve. And then there's a very, very long-term goal that I'm not sure if I should mention that right now.
No, absolutely say it. That's the whole point of this.
Okay, so content creators think very short-term often. It's about the next upload. It's about a 2, maybe 3 year time span that you are popular, right? That's another very common narrative. But I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of journalists, be in incubators run by very old media houses, like one of the oldest newspapers in the world. I spent a whole year there in an incubator. And walking through the halls and seeing newspapers from 100 years ago made me think, wouldn't it be cool to create a media property that still exists in 100 years and still inspires creative people? If I can do that, that is the ultimate goal.
You've given me tingles all over my arms right now. I love that. I think because what I'm hearing you saying is you're actually creating a movement that goes beyond and transcends us as individuals, because people will always have somewhere where they belong. And in some ways, someone like myself, who I've always felt out of place in financial services, and yet I feel more comfortable and at home in the creative space. So I wonder, would I have made different choices if I had a supportive community that was able to give me space to breathe, be able to invest in me, teach me skills that I don't learn in school? So I think that's super admirable, Valentin. I really am keen for you to share that with everyone, because I think there are so many people that will jump on this journey with you. And I dare say it's not just restricted to Europe, because I believe that what you're talking about is an actual global empire, right? You may want to start with Europe, but Asia will need it.
One of the favorite terms I learned is global small business. That's how I see myself. And I think what enables this, or how I've come to that, is this combination between understanding and knowing the traditional media space, having worked in there, and this wild west of I'm a YouTuber, I'm an influencer, and like every single individual in there is reinventing the wheel, so to speak, which is great because a lot of new paths are being opened. And traditional is very stuck in their paths, but there's a lot we can learn from each other. And once we find what is working on both ends, we can have new global empires that inspire people in 100 years.
I absolutely admire the skill that you have in your video editing. Like I've watched your podcast and it's so well put together. And if
Thank
I
you.
just do a LinkedIn post with an actual image, it takes me half a day. So I think the skills that you would bring as well into that is just phenomenal. The kind of cross learning. I think we underestimate that. Like when I look at traditional businesses from like 50 to 100 years ago to now, a lot of the learning was on the job, even apprenticeships.
Yeah.
It's all about
Yeah.
on the job training. And when you're a creator, it does feel sometimes that you're by yourself and you're constantly online trying to hear the next person selling snake oil. Like if you copy my secret formula.
Yeah.
But I think actually meeting people in person and then them owning your outcome will be a phenomenal thing. But
Yeah.
how do you see yourself cultivating that sense of belonging though?
That is the $1 million question. I mean, it is through content and through having these conversations at scale. Because we don't have a common narrative for what is creator culture, what is European creator culture. That is not a defined narrative at all. And I'm sure if you talk to 10 different people, they will give you 10 different answers. And so starting to think about this with other people, I think is the first step to that. And giving everybody a direction to where do we want to take this, right? Beyond just our own personal gains. What do we want to impact in the world? That's also a very recent switch that I've had. With everything happening in the world right now, it doesn't matter what you make content about, if it's tech or finance or lifestyle or travel. You have a voice that actively influences how the world is shaped around you. And so use it. Use it to influence people in a positive way. That is what I'm trying to do.
So what I'm wondering here, like in terms of where your vision and mission is, if you were given 100 million today,
Yeah,
how
that's
would
a
you go
lot.
about investing that in this vision of yours?
I think what I would prioritize would be bringing people together in a physical space. One thing I'd love to do is host a 3-day event for content creators.
Nice.
I mean, with 100 million, we could buy a nice house in Vienna and make it a content house. I have the plan sketched out for it with a studio and a little shop where you have all the creators' merchandise, maybe, or some tools for thinking. And then above, you have some offices, maybe even some living spaces for people visiting.
When you go to do this, we need to speak because you should never buy your building. We need to go
Okay.
from order to door so we don't have to hold stock and that way creators know how to manage their cash flows. But we will get there,
Okay.
right? That's the whole premise of something.
Yeah.
All right. If you could give a content creator that is new to the space, kind of like breaking out that 2-year mark, right?
Yeah.
What is that one piece of advice that you would give them?
The question always is, can you imagine yourself doing anything else? If the answer is yes, do something else.
That's a tough question to ask. It sounds very simple, but as you're asking it, I'm actually asking it
Yeah.
myself. So I see
Yeah.
the power of that.
Because that was what people get asked in film school. Because film is a brutal job and very few people make it to the top. So if you can imagine yourself being a dentist, go be a dentist.
Well, I think the stats is what's so alarming. At the end of the day, people need to put food on the table. You can do it. You absolutely can. And people fall for these big magical numbers. But when you look at it as a percentage overall, it is quite small. So it's about understanding how do you, as a content creator, recognize that it's not just about YouTube alone. It's about how do you build different channels. A bit go about like your Dungeons and Dragons, right? How do
Yeah.
you kind of pull that in? How do you support yourself even after that content goes out when it's 2, 3, 4 years old? How do you still reuse it in a very insightful way? When you speak to, I would say, new-ish creators, those that are like less than 2 years, it's this constant need to always put something brand new out. versus you
Yes.
can just repackage, right? This is a classic business move. Right? It's not just specific to content creators, but let's learn from other industries and almost help ourselves a little bit with burnout, help ourselves a little bit with workload management, help
Yeah.
ourselves a little bit in actually recognizing that the repetition of your point is important to land it and get the impact on your community.
And that's why community is so powerful, or having a handful of people around you who know what you're trying to do and where you're trying to go. Because there's obviously no shortage out there in terms of advice on how to become a successful creator, how to get those shiny numbers that are ultimately meaningless once you hit them. But if you get feedback from somebody that understands you, who knows your content, who knows your journey, it has way more impact than put green in the thumbnail. You
Yeah,
know,
no,
put
completely.
a big number.
I completely agree. So, rapid fire. Most surprising thing that you've learnt about European creators?
There's way more than I expected.
Who is your dream podcast guest?
Laura Kampf. I've been wanting to have her on the show, and I have not dared to reach out because I'm a chicken.
What's the one word that you would use to describe the European creator economy?
The one word that comes to mind is sustainable. I hate that word because it's cheesy and overused, but there is more focus to me on how can I do what is fun and keep it sustainable rather than make a bunch of money in 2 years and then flame out.
I love the way that you actually define the word sustainable because I think it becomes very pragmatic and
Yeah.
actionable for the individual. Like when I think about sustainable as well, when you spoke about building the kind of orbit for creators that goes on for over 100 years, like after we go, right? That's also another version of sustainability. But I love what you actually shared because it is about the one creator and how you are sustainable. Because if we can all be sustainable, then actually the culture sustains itself. So I love
Yeah.
that. I
Yeah.
love
And
that.
the planet.
Your personal motto.
Forget the algorithm, create with friends.
You should trademark that. That has to
It's
be trademarked. Forget the algorithm, create with friends. I'm seeing t-shirts, I'm seeing pens, I'm seeing trademark in your future. That is awesome. Because
you,
it's
you can get right
true.
on that.
I'll help you out. I love having this conversation. I hope we get to do this again. I really enjoy it. And I really hope people see what an amazing spirit you have and your true passion for the culture. And that this is all about how we can kind of link arms and bring it forwards and be easier for us all.
Thank you for coming on and taking on that challenge, because this is your first official role as an interviewer.
But how can
I
everyone
love
get
it.
involved on the Orbit for Creators?
Comment, like, subscribe. And if you want more of this, you can check out the newsletter or sign up for the community, where you find other crazy solo creators who try to do this sustainably.
Woohoo!
That might be
I
the
love
most
it.
succinct pitch I've ever given.
That's awesome. When under pressure and when you're just being you, right? It is just
Yes,
amazing. It is
exactly.
amazing.
Yeah.
I really
Okay.
enjoyed this.